Quote, "If you want to change the world, start with yourself." Mahatma Gandhi. You live in a bubble. I'm sure everyone in this room has heard that phrase at least once before. But what does it mean to live in a bubble? Take a moment and really think about what comes to mind. Let's start at the beginning. What is the bubble? The idea and the image of the bubble are often used to describe an echo chamber. Imagine yourself at the top of a mountain. You yell something out and you hear your echo slowly fade away. Now imagine that same echo in a bubble. It will keep bouncing back at you. So, how does this work? To understand how our bubbles are created, we need to discuss how our brains work. Daniel Kahneman, in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, states that we have two decision-making processes. The first takes more time. For decisions that require to sort through information and find the best solution, like solving a math problem. The second is for the quick decisions we make every day, like choosing a chocolate bar. For our brains to be efficient, we sometimes have to make decisions without all the information, either because we don't have all the information or because we don't have enough time to process all of it. Cognitive biases are these shortcuts our brain takes to make the quick decisions. One in particular that is very common and extremely relevant to this talk is confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is when we try to find information that confirms what we already believe. This creates our bubble. We're only looking for information to support our beliefs. Social media algorithms function in a similar way to cognitive biases. Confirmation bias and other cognitive biases create a bubble in our minds, and social media algorithms create a bubble in our lives. We all know that feeling. You're on your phone, maybe it's TikTok, maybe it's YouTube, but your focus stays trained on the screen, watching video after video after video. It only feels like a few minutes, but before you know it, the clock says it's 2 in the morning and your eyes feel sore. It's become so common that TikTok now has videos telling you to take a break from your screen, to go for a walk or get some sleep. A New York Times podcast, The Rabbit Hole, investigated algorithms to figure out how they work and their effect on us. Guillaume Chasleau, a creator of the YouTube algorithm, explains that social media algorithms are based on are designed to recommend content based on videos you've looked at before. This sounds harmless, but if you think about what it really means, you're actually being bombarded with the same content over and over. This limits the content that you see and narrows your perspective as a result. For example, if all you look at are cat videos, all you'll be recommended are more cat videos. You won't realize that there are lots of other penguin, dog, and turtle videos too. This is a cute example, but if you think about your perspective on the world being this narrow, it can be extremely harmful. The same thing happens in our brains. And it makes sense if you think about it. If you've never been exposed to other perspectives before, how could your brain consider them? Cognitive biases are dangerous because as humans, we're wired to choose things that we're familiar with over those that are new. This leads us to ignore other people's perspectives. Let me help you visualize this. Imagine you're in front of a mirror with one behind you as well. As you look into the mirror, most of what's reflected back at you is yourself. When I was around 12, I thought I knew everything. It was an awkward stage where I had enough life experience to know some things, but not enough to know I had so much left to learn. Because of this, I was super argumentative about everything with my parents. I always thought that I was right. I failed to see that they had a valid perspective too. This can be harmful to our relationships with our friends and family at school or at work. When we're consumed by our own perspectives, experiences, and ideas, we ignore those of others. This creates a lack of understanding and awareness on social issues and the ideas behind them. The inability to understand and empathize with different perspectives is what we find at the root of issues like racism, LGBTQ+ rights, and intersectionality, making it very difficult to find solutions. I learned this with a group of peers when trying to organize affinity groups at school. An affinity group is meant to be a safe space where people who have been affected similarly by an issue or identify similarly can comfortably share their experiences and find community and belonging. What happened was that people jumped to conclusions based on existing perceptions that it was segregation and should not happen. Our team could have argued back because this accusation was ridiculous and wrong. Instead, we spoke to everyone that was confused or upset, listened to their perspectives, and tried to explain why affinity groups were helpful. Sometimes it worked and we bridged that gap in understanding, and sometimes it didn't. But we looked for other ways to have the same discussions because we understood where they were coming from. If we had stayed in our bubble, we might have hurt the people we wanted to support. When we have the same views as others, our bubbles overlap, creating bubbles within bubbles. Societal bubbles, as we might call them, exacerbate the effects and the bias of our individual bubbles. Remember the mirrors from before? You have a mirror in front of you and one behind you. This is your individual bubble. Now, add to that a circle of mirrors surrounding you. This is the societal bubble. That circle of mirrors amplifies what's being reflected back at you. This is what happens in a societal bubble. A view once held by an individual can now be supported by everything around them. This impacts everyone through things like social norms, expectations, and customs. For example, apartheid in South Africa was once an idea held by one person, but was then built into all the systems of that society and became the norm. Social norms, expectations, and customs are not inherently bad, though. For example, traffic would be chaos if we didn't have a common system. Our legal system is based on common understanding. However, we debate our laws based on the realities of our society and update them constantly. Imagine what life would be like if we didn't. In the words of Desmond Tutu, if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. Societal bias, if left unchecked, can lead to unjust laws and the marginalization of vulnerable groups. We need to find a way to listen to one another without getting entrenched in being right as individuals and societies. On an even larger scale, this phenomenon transfers into our perception of democracy. Let's go back to the mirrors. Picture the mirror in front and behind you, your individual bubble. The circle of mirrors surrounding you that represents the societal bubble. Now, imagine that the circle of mirrors is in a room where all the walls, the floor, and the ceiling are mirrors as well. This is the effect of misinformation by the media and political polarization. It bombards us with a particular idea and is extremely dangerous to the very fabric of our democracy, and to some degree, our safety. We see this type of political polarization in the United States and other countries around the world. Politicians are so deeply divided and unwilling to listen to one another that they are unable to work together. This spreads to the communities beyond Capitol Hill, to the general public, where we see the same political polarization and unwillingness to cooperate because of it. This can feel overwhelming. Once you know all of this, what do you do? Now that you're a little bit more aware of how your mind works and where you may be biased to other perspectives, what can you do to limit the effects? Quote, people are violent or peaceful, and that depends on their politics, their social world, the way that they see their communities, and the way that they see themselves, unquote. Reza Aslan. From here, take the time to know yourself, know your bubble, and then get to know the world and the people around you. Take the time to venture out of your bubble and open yourself up to new experiences and ideas. Your bubble, your echo chamber, the world, is what you bring to it. What do you bring to it?